Welcome to the Building Doctor Show with Jens Johansson.
Welcome to the Building Doctor Show. I'm your host, Jens Johansson. Glad to see you here to learn more about your buildings. Today, as a Valentine's special, we're talking about protecting your community from heartbreak or resident HOA lawsuits, turning on each other and infighting and cannibalizing each other. So HOA resident lawsuits are on the rise, and they're all over social media ads, and we're getting lots of good spoof content about fake HOA meetings or even real HOA meetings where people have the video going. And I'm sure you've seen them. So hopefully you're not seeing such craziness in your meetings, but we wanted to talk about that. So if you're joining us today on the podcast or YouTube, thanks for listening, but you're missing out on the slide content. And if you'd like to have your questions answered live, be sure to visit our website, j2buildingconsultants.com. I'm sorry, j2consultants.com, and register for the Building Doctor Show and attend live so you can bring your live questions there. But even if you're on YouTube or Spotify, you can type in your questions into their Q&A section, and we will get notified and we'll answer them. So we appreciate your questions because they help steer the show. They give us ideas for future shows, and they kind of help everybody, in this volunteer board and even manager society. We learn from people's questions. And if you have more specific questions, stay tuned for a link to schedule a free one-on-one call with me, and we can talk to you about your building. So our producer, Syra, is going to be monitoring the chat. She'll figure out the giveaways for us. So make sure you stay tuned to that. So as always, remember the show is for educational content only. We're not giving legal or financial or engineering advice. And don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons and ask questions. Those all help our ratings and fuel our desire to create more content. So let's get on with our Valentine's special. So today we're talking about HOA resident lawsuits or legal threats, or just kind of fighting, and how that actually begins in the HOAs. And really the best way we can talk about it is kind of what we've established is 4 great operating rules to really minimize conflict in HOAs, but also the 7 most common HOA triggers and how to address them. So make sure you put your questions in the comment section below and stick around for the giveaways. All right. If you're on social media, you're seeing it now. We sue HOAs. So we just took some of these snippets off Facebook, and you'll see this lawyer ad, and here's the various harassed by your neighbor, singled out by your HOAs, your neighbor driving you crazy. And then we get some even of the YouTube. A lot of these are AI generated, but they're actually kind of funny because they're, this is the wrong beige. You needed to use the right beige on your paint job and things like that. So instead of feeling, wow, they're out to get me, this is scary, we're going to talk today about how we can, hey, we know it's out there. We know it's fun to make fun of bad boards. And so let's just think about how we can help you recognize these patterns. We can reduce conflict, and we can reduce the escalation, and we can build and enjoy better run communities. So let's talk about how these things start and how we can stay away from them. And again, this isn't legal advice. We've worked with thousands of boards and have seen what works and what doesn't. And that's a lot of our board mentoring content of, hey, it's time to have maybe another town hall meeting where we're not voting, we're just talking about it. Let's have a few marinating sessions where we can, here's what we're going through. We're dealing with this issue. We want to share it with you. We don't have all the answers yet. And so this is what great HOAs do operationally. And so the key takeaways are: operate within your boundaries, have D&O insurance. I'm going to talk to you about that. Seek counsel as a volunteer group. And that counsel can be lawyers, managers, consultants, contractors. Uh, get the votes, document those decisions. And if you do all that, you're going to avoid 99% of these sticky situations. Okay, so most of these HOA legal threats follow a pretty predictable path. It starts with a frustrated homeowner, sends a demand or a threat, or starts putting it in writing and getting nasty. Then the board has an opportunity to respond and de-escalate. And we're going to talk about that and various strategies you can do. But the key is we hear you, we recognize it. Okay, here's what we're doing about it. Here's what we can do about it. And then taking it through a reasonable process and documentation. And this stuff matters a lot. And then just remembering in the backdrop that insurance exists. And so panic is not the solution there. So what we mean by that is make sure you have a directors and officers policy. It's called D&O versus E&O, which is errors and omissions. This is directors and officers. It covers the board members carrying out their responsible official duties. And no insurance policy covers fraud or lying or sneakiness or bending or breaking the rules. But if you're operating within your standard, operating on behalf of the HOA, and you have this directors and officers policy, it will protect you. And we'll get into a little bit of that, but it's inexpensive. It's not like a property policy. It's not like, the earthquake insurance, et cetera. It's inexpensive. It's matter of fact, and it protects the board and helps us out. Okay, so the 4 rules of great HOAs. Here's what they follow, and we'll break these down. But you have to know your rule book, the bylaws, governing documents, and anything that has to do with your association. It would be similar to 2 different sports teams. One's playing soccer, one's playing football. And in football, I can touch the ball. In soccer, I can't use my hands except for the goal. So there's all these little rules and things, even though they're kind of played on the same field. Now I'll probably get some hate about that. But anyway, you got to know your rules and you got to follow them. You're gonna document what you do and what you say. That's just very simple. Everybody gets that, and you're just gonna put it down in paper. It avoids the telephone. She told me, he told me, we had this conversation. Nope, that's where an email, any of these other things we'll talk about, document it. Then, of course, treat people consistently. Hey, even when they're annoying, right? We have annoying people in our lives, but consistent treatment, fair treatment, helps us establish, we're not picking on anyone, harassing anybody. And then have that D&O insurance and use your experts. So use guidance. So as we break down rule number 1, know your rules, bylaws, and governing documents. I am not saying great boards have to memorize their documents. That's not it at all. And so back in the olden days when we had a 3-ring binder of here's the things, maybe I have Post-it notes on some of these key pages. Maybe I have highlighted sections. Maybe I create, now I can use chat and search through it. But these are things like understanding who owns the windows. What does maintenance mean? What is a budget? How do if I don't have enough money, how do we do an assessment? How do we notify the residents that there's going to have some vote or something going on in the community? So just kind of understanding that, follow those. So then apply them consistently and intentionally. We're following the rules. Nobody likes the rules, but everybody, we're doing the best we can. We're following the rules. And then, occasionally it's time to question unclear, outdated language. If you're an older association, there's no language about, satellite dishes and wireless internet and working from home or working remotely, or so kind of start thinking about that, and that's where we pour some time into do these old rules work for me? And then one of the big things is if you're a new community, your rules and bylaws and governing documents are written by the developer. They usually benefit the developer. And so now that we've transitioned, oh, wait, we're the board. These rules and guidelines don't benefit us. Here's what we want to change. And the last bullet, amend the documents when they no longer serve the community and have a vote to change them. We're not just arbitrarily changing the documents. We're updating them, we're amending them, we're changing who owns the windows. That's a real common thing now. It was vague. Now unit owners own the windows, or HOA owns the windows because we want consistency. We want them all installed correctly. Or think of the past arguments you've had of, I wish they didn't say this, but they do, and I feel like this is awkward. So revisit them, change them, modify it, and then during that voting period, you can say, "Hey, remember last year when we had to do all that and we were following the rules? This is what we're trying to change and update. Is everybody on board with that?" Yes, we're on board. Okay, great. Let's vote and amend. So, and then seek professional input when interpretation is unclear. An HOA attorney, an attorney that specializes in HOAs and running the HOAs, they're typically the attorney that deals with, again, your bylaws and fines and foreclosures and dog poop and, complaints and things like that, as opposed to a construction attorney or some kind of litigation attorney. Find that HOA attorney that can help you, on an hourly basis and just kind of get these things cleaned up. They will also bring in, the rules are changing all the time, right? So we have new rules in every state and it affects the old Condo Act, and my bylaws aren't quite in compliance with the new rules. And so a good HOA attorney can help you do that. A good manager can help you do that. And then when you get into construction and things like that, that's where a consultant or an engineer or a contractor can help you do those things. And your accountant, your reserve study specialist, all those people are people you would seek input from. All right, number 2, document what you do and what you say. So most conflicts escalate because someone believes nothing was done. The documentation shows the story. And this is as simple as you get a complaint from a resident, and we can go back through the attendance records and we can write an email back to that resident and say, we can see from the attendance records, you haven't shown up for a meeting where we've discussed this. And here's a copy of the letter we sent out for all those who couldn't attend. And so are we sending it to the wrong address? Because the address on file is what you gave us. And, it's not our problem that you moved and didn't update records. You can kind of see how, it's fairly simple, but you can say, look, we host these meetings, we post the agendas, we post the meeting minutes, we've talked about this. Here's all the stuff, and we've been talking about it for months. So I'm sorry you were unaware, but here's the evidence. We've been working on this for months, and everybody else is up to speed but you. That kind of makes those things go away. So board votes and approvals. Obviously, how did this change? I have an old set of documents. Oh yeah, you do. Here's the revision date. The revised last year. You're working off a bad set of documents. Budgets and financial decisions, of course, all need votes. There's very good voting around budgets, but are you holding those votes? You wouldn't believe how many boards are like, oh, we don't need a vote. No, we're fine. Like, wow, I know you're operating. I haven't even read your documents, but I know you're out of bounds. So then communications and notices, we talk about that. And conditions observed and actions taken. So this gets more into, we had a plumber come out. Here's the plumber's report on that. We fixed what the plumber told us to fix, but they didn't identify there's some other stuff, and that other stuff caused the problem you're talking about. So that everybody was unaware of this, but we as the board are relying on the plumber to take care of what they need to take care of. And this is a new issue. We were unaware of it. Converse is true. we knew about this issue for a long time. We haven't done anything about it. And you've complained about it a whole bunch of times. Here's all your complaints. And we don't have any responses because we're being non-responsive. That sounds like lawsuit material. So, stay out of that. And it doesn't have to take on a life of its own about, documenting anything and everything, but good documentation of just here's what we're doing, here's why we did it, based on this information and based on our rules and governing documents. So number 3, we've all gotten the finger wave and we've all been told to be quiet and told, we didn't know what we were talking about. Okay. So this is treating people consistently, even when they are annoying. So this is applying rules and processes the same way for everyone. Separate personal feelings from governing decisions. As a board member, I'm probably paying the same, assessment you are, but here's why we are doing that. Use systems to manage issues, not reactions. And kind of the phrase consistency doesn't mean being cold, it means being fair. And so Robert's Rules of Order is a really good process to manage meetings, to manage, people that won't get in order, or meetings that kind of get out of control. There used to be a $7 pamphlet on Amazon. It's probably $10 now, but it was a very short cheat sheet guide to Robert's Rules of Order. Robert's Rules of Order can be this big for managing governments. It really can be about this big for managing your board meetings effectively, and it's an approved standard. And so you can say, this is why we're moving forward. Robert's Rules of Order says we can do this, and you're being consistent about it. And so that process de-escalates. It helps set boundaries. And then I just encourage you to take the high road. That's the difference between getting in a road ragey argument and saying, I understand you're stressed out, but we as the board have a community to run, and we're gonna follow the rules, and we're gonna let your insults slide right off. So managers run systems, leaders communicate and set vision. So kind of the leaders and the board, you are the leader. You're really setting the vision of here's what this community is going to be. Here's how we're going to run it to the systems, and we're going to communicate. You have kind of a chief repeating officer, if you will, and not just hide behind. We talked about it once. You weren't there, see you bye. But just kind of go over communicating. Communicate to clarity. That's just kind of a nice way of, some people read things, some people hear things, some people talk, and so we just over communicate that. Then we get into the kind of the 4th rule. Again, have that D&O insurance and use experts like attorneys, managers, building consultants. That all comes down to this understand the duty of business reasonableness or business judgment. You can Google that for a volunteer board member. And basically what it says is the law does not expect you to be an architect, an accountant, a professional manager. It doesn't expect a volunteer to be all those things, but it does expect the business reasonableness to use the systems they have available to them and the rules that they have available to them, and to seek outside counsel and to listen to the outside counsel. So we'll get in, there's some famous big building collapses, relatively recently. We can see from the board meetings, they were ignoring key advice from engineers and contractors, and they just ignore, put off. Unfortunately, the building falls over. And so just taking business reasonableness, saying, I'm not a paid person, I'm a volunteer, we're working together, we're using the tools and the people and the reasonable routes around us, and we're treating people fair and we're doing our best, basically. And then as far as experts and professionals, they have licenses they have experience, and they also have insurance. And so if they're giving you bad advice, they have E&O insurance, which is errors and omissions insurance. And so rely on their policy. If we hired you as the professional to do this, and now we have a problem because of your work. So it's the same with your D&O insurance. Your D&O insurance is great. It provides a lawyer, it provides an expert, it provides all these things for you as a part of your policy. So if it really comes to the lawsuit stage, um, you're protected and you're not having to pay all these fees all of a sudden that weren't in the budget for this issue. So now let's go on to the 7 lawsuit triggers. Here they are. HOA neighborhood treatment, governing document violations, failure to maintain and repair. This is a pretty good one. Common and limited common area disputes. Who's in charge of maintaining the walkway? Who's in charge of maintaining my deck surface? Breach of fiduciary duty, negligence, unreasonableness. These are kind of the 7 triggers, and you can go on any of those lawyer lawsuit ads, and they will give you examples of each one of these. And you can see where you land there. So, trigger number 1, neighborhood treatment. What this looks like, selective enforcement or even harassment of, we only send out parking tickets to that building or those people. Nope, everybody gets a parking ticket if you're parked outside the lines. Noise complaints, balcony smoking. Hey, why doesn't the board president get busted for smoking in their unit? And you can see kind of that double standard applying. And then neighbor to neighbor hostility. Here's a picture of somebody banging on the ceiling, and they're getting into it, and they'll blame the board for not doing it. So how it escalates, it's emotional, it's not procedural, and people start documenting everything and bombing you with requirements to step in and address things. And so we can fix that with boundaries and process. And so, we understand this is frustrating. Our role is to enforce the governing documents. Here's the process we use to review and proceed. Think of a standard complaint form, not random emails. That helps us in our documentation. We didn't receive any complaints from you. Here is the standard form we told you to use. Oh, I sent you a text. That's not the standard form, because once I get a form, then the form follows the system. And so you can kind of see the process, if you will. And all these forms have what? Date, time, and location. Let's cross the top on any kind of thing. I can see when it was sent. I can see who sent it. And so we have a timestamp. And then we got to apply these rules consistently. And, a lot of these aren't HOA issues. They're neighbor issues. And so we can tell them, this is an HOA issue. I can't help you. Stop bothering me. I can try to talk to the neighbor, but I'm not the sorority mom here. You guys got to figure this out. You can call the police. I'm not 911. So those are ways to do that. That's what neighbor treatment looks like. Number 2, governing document violations, and this kind of gets into colors, flooring choices, big fences, barking dogs, things like that. So a resident makes a modification, frames in their patio, makes it an enclosed living room, and changes the look of the outside of the building. Puts in hard surfaces, so now I can hear all the footsteps above me. I don't know. You can builds a big fence and paints it blue. So these are those issues of your governing documents should have something about that. Here's the colors you can use. Here's the flooring products you can use. Here's the paint colors you can use for the front door. Can I have plants on my balcony or not? Things like that. And so, again, we're applying it consistently. We have a process. We need that alignment in the rules. And then if there are no rules, well, maybe we should think about setting one. And so that gets back to that review and contemplation. What happened last year that took up a bunch of our time and caused us a bunch of stress? And so here's how we can go through that. So then you can cite the exact section. You can create a one-page quick reference for common issues. You can use approval pathways, like the architectural committee needs to review that. Did you get those steps done? It allows you to train up new board members on basics, kind of a fast onboarding, if you will, for new board members as they come on. And so it's kind of a good way to understand the normal issues. So this governing document violation comes from you reading what the governing documents are. So if you never, I'll just say, and so if you haven't read them, you don't know what you can do or not do. And it helps you explain. So the picture of the little girl wondering, why are you making me do this? Well, it's in the documents, and here it is. All right. Failure to maintain and repair is the third one. This is a big one because it has to do with budgets and assessments. So if I don't have any money because I haven't properly budgeted, or I haven't set aside reserves, or I haven't set aside whatever, I have to what? I have to assess. And so maintenance of the common areas or repair of the common areas, I've read lots of bylaws. None of them say, if we have the money, we will fix it. They all say, if we don't have the money, we will assess and then we will fix. And so working with communities that are doing big construction projects, there's actually, nobody wants to pay a big assessment, but there's actually a group of owners, and that group size is growing over the years. It says, wait a second, time out. I moved into a nice place. I want a nice place. Assess me and I will pay my assessment. Let's go. And if you don't, now I'm going to go back against the board and say, look, you need to assess if we need to fix these things. And leaky roofs are unacceptable, or rotten decks are unacceptable. I'm willing to pay my fee because I want to live in a nice area, or I want to live in a nice community. And so you got to kind of watch out. We kind of assume that nobody wants to pay their assessments, but there is a growing group that says, take care of it. And if you don't, I'm going to be mad at you. So these are leaks and repairs and things like that. So people kind of feeling ignored, they can understand, hey, we're going through a 6-month process. We're suing the developer, fighting with our insurance company, and we'll get those things done. Bear with us a little bit longer. So you get a little bit of time because you can talk about that. But bottom line says you got to assess if you don't have the money, and that's how you get the work done. So it's, again, this is communication. And kind of little maintenance procedures. Hey, I reported my leaking roof a week or two ago. What's going on? And okay, we've logged this issue. We've assigned it our maintenance queue. The contractor was 2 weeks out. He's coming, and our goal is to get this done as soon as possible. Okay, the resident understands schedules. They don't understand being ignored. And, owner responsibility versus HOA responsibility. This is knowing your bylaws. Who owns the windows? Who owns the, rear deck? And so then creating that response timeline standard, keeping a maintenance log, date reported, actions taken, next steps. And that's written documentation. And then using kind of proactive inspections for older properties to get on top of these things. So number 4, common and limited common area disputes. So again, understanding what is what from your documents. Typically, limited common area means I have to go through your unit to get to that. And so a very easy way is your deck on your unit is limited common. It's common because it's part of the association, but it's limited because I'm the only one that can walk through my unit. And so common element would be the walkway or the staircase outside of several unit doors. And so just understanding who pays for what and why. And so, is there argument over who owns what and how, and HOA delays, or if there's some kind of leak, this resident's toilet overflowed and leaked into my unit. Is that a resident to resident dispute? Is the plumbing system owned by the association, so it's a common element? Is the toilet that leaked their personal property? So you can start connecting the dots and seeing which entity should pay for it, which should fix it. So, but it kind of becomes this big, big black box of timing and money and responsibilities and safety and access and things like that. So clarify that before there's an emergency. So when there is an emergency, you can go right in and take care of that. So kind of understanding the difference between those two, identifying them, create a who maintains what chart, distribute that out. Then it's, here's our notice for you to clean your deck, but you haven't cleaned your deck for 4 years, and that rot and that debris and that dirt have caused problems to the building. And now there's building money being paid on it, but we have our documentation where we followed up with you and you didn't do anything. Everybody has a camera on their phone and they can take pictures and kind of just, I'm not trying to be over micromanaging, but everything can have a text, an email, and a photo attached to it, and for very easy documentation. Okay, next one is breaching fiduciary duty. So this is a little bit of a deeper thing of kind of secrets, people being kept in the dark, no voting on things when they were supposed to vote. Maybe the treasurer is kind of mishandling some funds. Maybe there's some conflict of interest. Yeah, I'm a board member, but I also own a construction company. And so all of a sudden, my construction company is doing all the repairs out here because, is it kind of insider trading? Does it look and smell like conflict? You kind of want to stay away from that because it's a loss of trust or hypothetical. And in that darkness or lack of communication, we always assume the worst. So these kind of go crazy. But record keeping, transparency, again, following the process so that the people can see the reasoning. And fiduciary duty, yeah, I mean, it's money and it's contracts, it's hiring my buddy, or don't worry about it, it'll be fine, taking from Peter to pay Paul. So that stuff, yeah, and it's real. That's a little bit more complicated to prove, but we got to stay on top of that. Okay, negligence. This is just not doing what we're supposed to be doing, or we have rules and we're not following them, or we know the railing's broken and somebody finally gets hurt because of it, or we know the bulbs are all burned out and somebody gets mugged in the dark alley. And okay, so, or we've known about leaks for a long time and those leaks cause more and more and more damage or mold or all sorts of things. So negligence is a big kind of catch-all, and it starts with knowing about stuff and not getting it done, but then it can turn into you knew the rules, you were preaching to all of us about the rules, but you yourself weren't following the rules. So slip and falls are a good one of, hey, it's in our policy to salt the icy walkways and we didn't, and why. And so just kind of understanding safety issues and policies and things like that and how negligence plays into that. So then the seventh one is just unreasonableness. And this is, again, not equally applying rules or to different types of people or to not treating people the same or being unreasonable and not listening to the professional advice that was given or moving too fast. They're appearing to cave to pressure or fear or loud voices. So, a reasonable process is always greater than a perfect outcome of here's what we said we're going to do, and we did it, and it almost turned out great. But unreasonableness is kind of the definition of the opposite of that. So again, practical fixes around that. Communicate early, even when decisions aren't final. Let them know what's going on. Explain why something's being considered, not just what was decided. Share that professional advice and how it informed the decision. Allow time for questions before votes and whenever possible. Avoid reactionary decisions driven by fear or bullying. That would be unreasonable for a leader to be bullied. And so we need you as the board to stay strong and to say, no, I hear you. You're applying a lot of pressure and it doesn't feel good, but we're going to think about it and wait till that third bid comes in. So at least we have, 3 bids, that kind of thing. And then document that process clearly in meeting minutes. So these are the seven common triggers. You can kind of see how they fall. We've talked about systems. If you hadn't read it yet, James Clear, Atomic Habits, kind of his phrase in there is, we don't rise to our goals, we fall to the level of our systems. So what systems? Okay, so you keep falling. So if you have even some systems that we're following, here's what we do, here's how we do it, here's what the rule book says, and there may be a better way to do it. And we're always improving, but we're practicing reasonableness because we are a group of volunteers and we're doing our best and we're listening to the advice. And so that's kind of the genesis of what the show is about. Help people understand how good boards work well. So, all right, summarizing, the 4 best practices will prevent you from falling into those 7 triggers or traps. And we think, we're already seeing it. So we see an uptick in, upset residents or getting attraction from eager attorneys posting on social media and kind of riding that popular wave of make fun of boards. They're all dumb. They don't know what they're doing, or they're overly in my business and they don't need to be, that kind of thing. Painting board members is bad. We believe in board members. So we think that volunteer leaders need to be celebrated and supported. And we want you to live in happy and healthy communities and have value appreciating real estate that is well kept and well managed. So HOAs can be fun, and we have the educational content to support you. All right, finding the right professional is important. If you like to type, you can go to learn.j2consultants.com/consultant on call, or you can use your phone and scan that little QR code there and get in touch with our, scheduling thing, and you can find a time, free 15-minute phone call with you to get some specific advice about your building.
This podcast is part of J2's free live webinar, The Building Doctor Show. To attend the live show and ask your questions during the Q&A, visit www.j2consultants.com.